several times I've had the conversations with yins about when a lie is not a lie. And that seems to be a hard one for people. A lot of people rebel against the explanation that I provide. The explanation I provide being that a lie is not a lie whenever you're speaking an untruth to somebody who is not entitled to the truth. In fact, so I just had an orange slice this past week, and the only comment I got on that was somebody, you're wrong, nope, that's a lie, you're still lying. So there's two types of people that I can think of who rebel against the idea that you can tell an untruth and it not be a lie when you're speaking to somebody who is not entitled to the truth. The first person would be somebody who's very religious and who looks upon every untruth as being a lie. But then there's the second type of person. And do you know who the second type of person is? Second type of person is the one who doesn't like the idea that there is information that they're not entitled to. Which one are you? Which one, if you rebel against the idea that speaking an untruth is not the same as lying, which category do you fall into? Before we get much further along, I do want to say that conversation is going to involve some Bible talk. So I'm going to save it for the very end, as I like to do for those of you who are not religious, don't like to talk about religion, don't like to talk about the Bible, don't like any of that stuff. I'll save that conversation for the very end. But I would like to ask you this before we ever get there. Who is the ultimate authority on whether or not a lie is a lie? Is it you? Are you the ultimate authority on that? Is it me? Is it some government out there? Are they the ultimate authority on whether a lie is a lie? The answer is no. If you believe in God, then God is the ultimate authority on what is a lie and what is not a lie. And so you might be surprised to know that my explanation for when a lie is not a lie is biblical. It reflects God's own perspective on the matter. So anyway, again, we'll save that conversation for the end. If you don't like Bible talk and all that, don't worry. We're going to push it back for a while, talk about some other things, and then we'll get to that conversation toward the end. Got to take your sweater off. Let's get into this biblical discussion I told you about. So for those of you who don't want to hear no Bible talk, now's your chance to move on to something else. And I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for being here up to this point. For the rest of you who would like to understand why I talk about lying the way I do, and really it comes down to this: you don't have to tell everybody everything. So there are no two extremes like that. Like, boy, I got to share everything with everybody, and if I don't, I'm lying. Or if somebody asks me a question and I give them a wrong answer, I'm lying, even though it's none of their business, even though I'm under no obligation to provide that information. I don't want to lie, so I just give them that information anyway. If you want to find healthy balance in life, you have to come to an understanding on what is lying and what is not. And you have to understand that providing false information is not lying in all circumstances. It is in some. It's not in all. I've started applying this new healthy understanding of what is lying and not in your life. Can be very beneficial. It can be very helpful. It can help you manage yourself, your own life, in a more healthy way. Do you remember who I said the two types of people are who seem to have a problem with this fresh and more accurate understanding of lying, as I try to explain to people? The two types are people who are genuinely interested in morality, but take it to an extreme. And then the second type of person is the type of person who doesn't like the idea that there might be information they don't have a right to. That second type of person, what is their real motivation for rebelling against this explanation of what is lying and what is not? It's that they like being able to take advantage of people who have an inappropriate idea of these things or who are unhealthy. You see, they're Buzzards is what they are. They're buzzards. They don't like the idea that if they ask you a question and they're not entitled to that information, they don't like the idea that you can give them an answer that's not the truth, and still not be lying. So really, it's for their own self-gain that they rebel against this explanation. So who is the true authority on what constitutes lying and what does not constitute lying? It's not you or me. That would be the ultimate authority, wouldn't it? It'd be God. Now, what do we know about God and lying? Proverbs 6:16-17 says God hates a dishonest tongue. In other words, he hates lying. But this does not mean that a person's under obligation to divulge truthful information to people who are not entitled to it. So lying involves presenting a falsehood to a person who is entitled to know the truth, and doing so with the intent to deceive or injure him or another person. That's lying. It's presenting a falsehood to a person who is entitled to know the truth. Now, because we know that God hates lying, would it not go to reason that in cases where people who he favored and approved of and viewed as righteous, who appeared to lie, were not actually lying? Because if they were actually lying, and God hates lying, well, then that would be reflected in his dealings with them, wouldn't it? First of all, Jesus Christ. He said, don't throw your pearls before swine. And so that's why he often did not give full information or direct answers to certain questions, when doing so could have brought unnecessary harm. Abraham. You remember what he did? Abraham falsely presented Sarah as his sister rather than his wife when he was going into Egypt. So if you go to Genesis 12:10-19, it says, as he was about to enter Egypt, he, that being Abraham, said to Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. So when the Egyptians see you, they'll surely say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me but keep you alive. Please say, you are my sister, so it may go well with me because of you, and my life will be spared. Was Sarai Abraham's sister? Actually, it's interesting, that conversation there, because she was his wife, but I think if you look at the lineage, she was actually like a half sister or something like that to Abraham. So there's the full context of that. But clearly, he did not want people to know that she was his wife. He said, don't tell them you're my wife. If they ask, say this instead. And Abraham, of course, was considered God's friend, loved by God, and had God's favor. Isaac did the same thing. You go to Genesis 26:1-10. It says this, when the men of the place kept asking about his wife, he'd say, she's my sister. After some time had passed, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, was looking out the window, and he saw Isaac displaying affection for Rebekah, his wife. At once Abimelech called Isaac and said, she's actually your wife. Why did you say, she's my sister? So there again, gave false information, was not lying. We'll talk about why he wasn't lying. Of course, we got the example of Rahab. Do you remember who Rahab was? She was a prostitute in the city of Jericho. Now here's what Joshua 10:1-6 says about that. The king of Jericho, so this would be like the president of the United States or something, sending government officials to your house and asking you this. For some context, Rahab has just taken some spies, some Israelite spies, and she's hid them. The king of Jericho sent word to Rahab, bring out the men who came and are staying in your house, for they've come to spy out the entire land. But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Then she said, yes, the men came to me, but I don't know where they were from. And at dark, when the city gate was about to be closed, the men went out. I don't know where the men went, but if you quickly chase after them, you will catch up with them. However, she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them among stalks of flax laid in rows on the roof. So did Rahab lie? Did she lie when she gave that false information? What's interesting, if you go later on in the Bible, James chapter 2 verse 25, it says this, "Was not Rahab the prostitute declared righteous by works after she received the messengers hospitably and sent them out by another way?" Considered righteous, declared righteous by God. Now remember, God hates lying. So in this case, where Rahab specifically used untruth in order to misdirect the people who were coming after the spies, the Israelite spies, it's interesting, isn't it, that God didn't condemn her. He didn't condemn her. In fact, he declared her righteous. And then you got the example of Elisha. The prophet Elisha said, 2 Kings 6:19, Elisha now said to them, "This is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me. Let me lead you to the man you're looking for." However, he led them to Samaria. So in other words, he says, "I'll show you the way. I'll show you the city." And he did, and he took him somewhere else. A lot of people say, "Well, he lied." A lot of people would say, "Oh, Rahab lied." A lot of people would say Isaac and Abraham lied. Jesus lied by omission. In every one of these examples I've just given you, these people were considered righteous and had God's favor. How can that be if God despises lying, condemns lying, and does not tolerate or reward lying? In fact, the Bible says that it is impossible for God to lie. How? It can be so because in each instance, these people were not lying. They were instead giving false information to others who had no entitlement to the truth. In most cases, the information they were asking for, they were going to commit some crime with. In other words, they wanted the information in order to carry out some devious or bad intention. You say, well, how were some of these people not entitled to the truth? So, for example, in the case of Rahab, it was the government authority saying, "Where are these people? You need to tell us." Surely they had the authority, right? It come right from the king. So were they not entitled to that information? The answer is no, because their authority does not supersede God's authority. God was the ultimate authority. He had a purpose. They were working in harmony with that purpose, and these people were interfering. They did not have an entitlement to that information. So Rahab gave false information, but she did not lie, because in order to have been lying to them, they had to have been entitled to that information in the first place. So we're back in World War II, and the Nazis show up to your door. You're hiding your Jewish neighbors down in your basement. And the Nazis say, "By authority of the government, we demand that you tell us if you've seen any Jews in this neighborhood." And you say, "Why, no, I haven't seen any Jews. I sure wish I could help you, but I just can't. I haven't seen any. I'll tell you what, if I do see any, I promise I'll report them immediately." Okay, and the Nazis go away. Did you lie? No. You gave false information to those who were not entitled to the truth. They meant to commit moral crimes against humanity with that information. You say, well, yeah, a lady who commented on this orange slice the other day says, just don't say anything, because if you say the false thing, then you're lying. Lady, you're not getting it. You are not getting it. Put yourself in the position of the person hiding these Jewish friends of yours in your basement. You going to tell me you're just going to stand there in front of the Nazis and not say anything? Sir, I'd rather not comment on that. Man, they'd be down in your basement searching your house so quick. You see how not supplying the information gives them the answer that they're looking for that they're not entitled to. The answer is, yes, you have seen Jews, and they're probably in your basement. So I think that bears some reflection on. Like I said at the beginning, the two people who typically rebel against the idea that you can tell an untruth and it not be a lie are those who, first of all, are genuinely interested in morality. They really don't want to be liars, and that's a good thing. They just take it to an extreme. They don't understand the nuance of what constitutes a lie and how that is distinct from simply providing false information. If you come to me and you point blank put me on the spot and ask me for information that you are not entitled to, that is for me to know and share with who I want, only, you have no entitlement to it. I can tell you anything I want. And when you learn to use this appropriately in your life, it safeguards your privacy, your rights, shows a proper level of respect and dignity toward yourself, not to be sharing information with people that they're not entitled to and that you don't wish for them to have. It's not always as simple as just not saying anything. Sometimes it is that simple. But what I'm trying to point out here is that providing false information and lying are two separate things. I can provide you false information that you're not entitled, because you're not entitled to the real information, in order to safeguard my privacy, my dignity, and those sorts of things. Sometimes I might be able to get away with that by offering no answer at all, as Jesus Christ did on many occasions. They would ask him a question, and he would say, well, let me ask you a question. And if you can answer my question, I'll answer your question. They couldn't answer the question. So it was avoidance in a very strategic, masterful way. Of course, who could do these things more masterfully than Jesus Christ, the Son of God? And then there's the other type of person. Those are people who don't like the idea that there's information they don't have a right to. And I am suspicious that makes up the majority of people who rebel against that explanation or that insight into what separates lying from giving false information. I would say more times than not, it is that you don't like the idea that somebody is not beholden to provide you information that you are not entitled to. So it is really up to you. Speaking about emotional and intellectual honesty, it's up to you to sit down, consider these things that I share with you here today, and your motives. If you have the tendency to rebel at the idea that providing false information and lying are not one and the same thing, if you have a tendency to rebel against that, the next question for you to ask yourself would be, why? Is it for pure motives or for selfish motives that I rebel against that notion?